Welcome back to the shop and to the channel. Well, the last time we worked on the locomotive, I was struggling with how to get this floor sheet flat because it wasn't. And it needs to be, because if it's not flat, then the side sheets won't fit. They'll be warped and it'll look like crap, and I don't want this thing to look like crap. So I've got to figure out a way to permanently keep this thing flat. Now, what I did since the last video is I did have this thing upside down, and I cut most of the tacks for those center ribs and even for the bolster frames. I clamped these C-clamps to clamp the floor sheet down to the motorcycle lift, and then re-welded and put a number of more tacks in there. It's not finished welded yet, but it's pretty strong. And I still have a warp in this floor sheet. Now, I've got this piece of rectangular tubing here. This is probably 3/16 1/8 inch wall tubing, and I've got a couple of clamps welded to the floor sheet, one on each end. And that is actually got it relatively flat, but this can't stay where it's at. And I'll show you just how bad this is. I'll remove this piece here, and you can see here that there's a good 1/2 inch, if not more, where this floor sheet is bowed in the middle. I need to bring these sides back up. That's the task for today, at least initially. It is the weekend, so my metal suppliers are not open, and I really wanted to work on this. So I went up to Menards and bought some 1-inch angle iron, and my intention is to use these as Strongback. So I'll take one piece of this and weld it on the right side and another piece here over on the left. And what this will do, this will actually serve two purposes. One is it'll act like a Strongback, so hopefully the strength of this angle iron will keep the floor sheet flat. There's still a considerable problem with this. This is not really what I would have wanted for angle iron. It's only 1 inch by 1 inch by 1/8 of an inch. I kind of would have preferred 1.25 inches, and I would have preferred maybe 3/16 of an inch just to give it that extra strength and, you know, add a little bit of weight too. However, this is the only thing that they had at Menards that wasn't already a banana. They had some 1.25 inches by 1/8, but it was mishandled in every piece of it. Had a big old kink in it, and I didn't want to have to deal with trying to fix that kink before I needed to use it on this locomotive. So what I need to do now is, you know, clamp this back down, and that gets it nice and flat. I'm going to do a couple other things here first. Before I get started on this, however, I'm going to go down the length of these, and I'm going to drill some 1/4 inch holes, maybe every 8 to 12 inches, because I want to plug weld this down to the floor sheet. I'll do a couple of tack stitch welds on the inside to line it up, but then I want to plug weld it from the top. This will ensure that it's not going to try to pull up on me. So I'm hopeful, very hopeful, that this will be enough to get this thing nice and straight. I am going to bring up the side sheets so I can line it up, because these will also serve another purpose, and that is it'll give me some mounting locations for the side sheets. When the side sheets are installed, I'm going to drill a hole in the side of it through this angle iron and thread the angle iron so that I have a nice secure spot to attach the side sheets, the body, to the floor sheet, because I want this to be easily removable without having to remove everything from the interior. The way that JT Engineering designed this is he had mounting plates that were welded to the bottom of the side sheets where you bolted it from the top. And although that works, that makes it a challenge when you want to lift the body off. You have to take everything out of it first in order to do that. And I want to avoid that. I want to be able to leave the batteries, the electronic, probably air compressor inside the locomotive if I ever need to remove the body. The only thing I would need to disconnect would be anything running to the lights. Okay, I think that's enough jibber jabber. Let me mark out for some holes and start getting this thing positioned and welded into place. Hey, I'm going to interrupt the video here just for a minute to kind of give an announcement of an upcoming event that I think you might be interested in if you're watching this video. Every year at the Illinois Railroad Museum, there's an event called ARNFest that's held, and you might be familiar with it if you watch Keith Rucker's VintageMachinery.org YouTube channel. Now, this year, ARNFest is being held September 24th to 27th at the Illinois Railway Museum. Now, I typically only go on the Saturday of that event, which is the big swap meet. And I'm going to be there that morning on the 26th of September. I'm also going to be dropping in at Kyle Vanover's shop in downtown Chicago on the 25th. That's the Friday before. Kyle's going to have a little bit of a meet and greet down at his shop. So if you're interested in meeting Kyle, or me for whatever reason, go check out Kyle's channel. I'm sure he'll have an announcement on that soon. I put a link down in the description to Kyle's channel. So if you're going to be in the Chicago area on September 25th and want to come check out Kyle's shop, or if you want to come out and check out the trains and other events and exhibits at the Illinois Railway Museum, come out on the 26th. I'll be there early in the morning, probably taking off sometime a little after lunch because I have a 5 or 6 hour drive back home to Ohio. So looking forward to seeing some of you either at Kyle's or at ARNFest. There's links down in the description also for the website for ARNFest. Go ahead and get registered, come out and attend the show. It's a blast. And Keith Rucker attends every year. And if the weather's good, you might even see Mr. Pete, Lyle Peterson. He tries to show up every year. And every now and again, you see some other familiar faces. So, hope to see you in September. Use a little acetone here to clean off any more cutting oil. And then while I'm at it, go ahead and make sure that the holes are nice and deburred. So we'll get that taken care of, and then we'll start lining this up. All right, to line these up, I'm gonna start with the left side. That's the front. This is the rear. So I believe this is the left side sheet. And this is going to sit in that tab slot, and that tab slot, and that tab slot. Now with the floor sheet now flat, doesn't look too bad. I'm going to take these welding squares here. I'm going to use these welding squares here to hold this side sheet here square to the floor sheet in a few different spots. Just to be sure that it's not going to move. I do want to check to see how straight it is. Make sure nothing needs to be adjusted. That looks really good. And I'm really happy with how it's fitting here. So I feel pretty confident that I've got this straight. Now I need to go ahead and bring this piece in from behind. Now I don't have the cab sides in place. I could go ahead and grab those. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll get the cab sides in place here too. Although not as critical here, but I'm going to do it anyway, is the cab nose. And it fits in these slots like such. Got this larger welding square. We'll get that into place. That looks pretty good there. We'll do the other thing to the same thing to the other side when we get there, but right now we'll just set that over on the other side. All right, come around to the back and see how this is lining up. All right, this is lining up pretty decently. Since I have these C-clamps, I'm gonna go ahead and clamp these to the side sheet. That way I know this is nice and snug. I'll do the same thing down there, maybe about halfway. We're also going to make sure that it is flat. Double check this here, make sure that side sheet is nice and straight, and it is. Maybe come out just a little bit over here. It's square. All right, so I feel pretty comfortable in being able to get this welded into place. Don't believe it's going to be covering up any holes. Should be pretty good to go. Let me get the welder turned on and my helmet and at least start stitching this or tacking it before I plug weld it all the way down. I think I feel pretty good about this right now, so I think I might just go for it. Moving around a little bit so I don't build up too much heat in one spot. Okay, I got all the plug welds welded, and just to give it a little bit more strength, I went ahead and stitch welded about an inch in between each plug weld, and then also welded each end. So feel pretty good about this. Go ahead and get this sheet off and bring over to the right side sheet and do the same thing. I'll get this one here welded up off camera. Okay, well, I have both strongbacks welded. All the plug welds are welded. I stitch welded in between each plug weld. So now I get to take this off. So moment of truth. Okay, well, here it goes. I'll loosen this clamp, and if things go perfectly, this shouldn't move very much. Now it's clamped down at the other end, so there could be some tension on it, but it should stay pretty flat to the floor sheet. If it doesn't, well, then I got some more figuring out to do. It is coming up a little, not much. Take off the clamp down here at the other end. Again, not much. So I think it's still maybe a little. Let's put that side sheet back up and take a look, see how it looks with that side sheet. There might still be a little bit of warp in this, and I might not be able to do anything about it. All right, let's see how this left side fits now. Everything has been disconnected. Okay, it's in the slots. Yeah, there's still just the tiniest bit of warp in it, but I think that's fine. I don't really think it's enough for me to worry about. Not at all. I'm really happy with this. Really happy with the result. So it's no longer a banana. All right, so the next thing I got to do is take these clamps off. All right, I can get this out of the way. It's no longer needed. And now I got to get these clamps on. I did a pretty good strong weld on this because I didn't want them to go anywhere, so I need to cut this one off and also the one down at the other end. I'm going to take a wire cup to the whole floor sheet to clean up any BBs that are left over. We'll try to get the rest of those cleaned up. I think now we can turn it back over onto its top so I can finish out the work I need to do on the bottom. Do the same thing down at the other end. A couple BBs made their way down into one of these slots, so just use a cold chisel here to chip it off. Okay, let's clean off the table here, get rid of some of this extraneous stuff, and get it flipped back over. Well, it's a new day. Took a break from this, back out here in the garage. Now that I have this thing relatively flat, I can continue on with finishing out some of the welds here on the bottom. There is still a bit of a crown in this. It's not very pronounced, and I'm kind of thinking, we'll see if it plays out, that once I place the batteries on the top of this, because they'll be living in the center, that might actually even it out just a little bit. But if it doesn't, it's fine. It doesn't need to be any really flatter than it is right now. Hopefully I don't make it any more crown. So I need to strengthen up all these ribs and the side sheets, these side trim pieces. Right now it's just really tacked. So I'm not going to weld out the entire pieces or perimeter of these ribs. I'm just going to put some 1-inch stitch welds strategically around the perimeter. Not every tack is necessarily going to get a stitch weld. It's just going to sit and live as a tack, because I really don't want to put any more heat back into this than necessary. So let me get the welder fired up and get my gear on, and we'll just go around this thing and try to make it a little bit stronger. Once we get that accomplished, I haven't decided if I'm going to work on the fuel tank or we'll do the pilots and the coupler pockets yet. We'll see where it goes. Yeah, I'm going to move down to the other end, do a little welding down there. I'll bring you back when I wrap this part up. Okay, I think I have everything welded strong enough. I put a number of 1-inch stitch welds around all of the ribs. Now, if I was going to offer one piece of advice to JT Engineering, I think I would redesign how these center ribs were designed. I think these center ribs here where the fuel tank is, I would continue them all the way up to the front here. So it'd be one solid rib from here all the way to the other end of the locomotive. I think this spot here being, it's almost like a little bit of a hinge point. I think you could add this bolster piece on it as well as a secondary rib here on this side. I understand the need to keep this narrow for the fuel tank, but if this center rib was all the way straight up, and even maybe design it so it's also out of 1/4-inch material. If it's cut straight, laser wise, when you clamp that stuff together, it's not going to go anywhere. I don't think you really need that little extra 1 inch or so volume on the inside. If you take a look at the way a Certiflat welding table is constructed, it's similar, where it's ribs that keep that table perfectly flat, and it's very well engineered. And I think you could stick with the 12 gauge, maybe bump it up to 3/16, but having these center ribs as full length would provide that stability lengthwise and hopefully prevent it from warping. But we got it going. We managed to at least hopefully get it reasonable, and hopefully it stayed straight when I did all this extra welding. I haven't checked it. I'm kind of afraid to check. Anyway, let's move on to the pilots and coupler pockets. Now, I also made the pilots out of 1/4-inch material just to give it that extra durability, as well as the weight. I'm just going to mock this up here real quick with some welding squares to get this straight. I want to mock up the coupler pocket too. So the coupler pocket is made up of a number of different pieces. I've got 4 of them here. There's actually a few more that belong to this one. Now, the design of my coupler pocket is a little bit different than the original. This is extended out considerably, and I also included 2 different chain hooks because we do double safety chains at my club. And I've also included this little extra piece here. This is looking up. This little extra piece here is just a detail that the CB&Q did on their GP40s, so I figured it wasn't going to take that much effort to include it here. But this top of the coupler pocket needs to be inserted first before I can place all of this into position. So I'll kind of put this together. Now, these 2 tabs here will slide over the pilot. Here we go. And kind of work these down here to fit into slots. There we go. And then the bottom of the coupler pocket, remember we're upside down here. Use some of these smaller squares here just to see how that lines up. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I think I can go ahead and start tacking some of this together. This coupler's going to sit in here, something like this. Not exactly sure how far back I want this to be yet, so I don't know exactly where that hole's going to be. I got to do a little bit more studying. But I think for now we go ahead and get the welder turned on, go ahead, tack the pilot in, start tacking in the coupler pocket. All right, I'm going to get this tacked in. This is just 030 wire here right now. When I go to fully weld in the pilot, I'm going to switch over to the 035 wire. I'll get a little better penetration, at least on these two initial welds, and what I weld on the front side of the pilot. So for now, I just want to tack this in place so none of this moves. Warped in a little bit, as I would expect. Oh, maybe not too bad. All right. Check this again. Looking pretty good. All right, start tacking in this coupler pocket. So I was thinking the next thing I could do is weld in the steps. Now the steps use 5 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 5 pieces. So this piece sits in that slot, and then this piece here sits in this slot, like so. And then the steps get welded in between the two. So there's one there, and then there's a step here and a step here. I'm thinking though that if I were to do that, would I have room to get back in here? Yeah, I think I would. So maybe I will do that. How to get these welded in, make sure that they're square. That could be a good challenge. I think I can figure it out though. See, I think I can weld this piece on this corner. One thing I did make a mistake on is when I used the 1/4 inch, it's not a fatal mistake, but when I used the 1/4 inch floor sheet, I didn't extend the length of the tabs. So the tabs are still cut for the 12 gauge, which is fine. I'll just fill in, weld on the top, sand it smooth before it goes to paint, and probably do a little bit of body filler too. Although I don't look forward to the body filler. You know my track record with that stuff. All right, let me get these tacked in. I think I'll even use that slot here as my tack point because it'll give me some flexibility here. Okay, so this is not going to quite fit because of where this side trim comes. But that's okay. We'll just go ahead and grind down a little bit of that to make it fit. Okay, well, as long as that ends up square, I think that's all it needed. All right, there we go. Perfect. Now this first piece ended up a little out of square, but that's why we only tacked it on the bottom. So now I can fix that, and then we'll tack it on the back. Okay, that is not going anywhere. We'll finish welding that out in a minute. All right, next, let's go ahead and fit the steps in. This first one's pretty easy. And I think I'll use one of these magnets to help keep it square and flat. And we can fit the next step into position. Okay, I think that's a little bit better for squareness. Tack that into position. All right, and now the last one. This one sits a little bit off of the pilot. Okay, that looks really good, as long as this is flat. All right, that's the stairs on this side. So I need to do that same with the other side of this pilot, and I need to do all this again on the other side of the locomotive. I will probably go ahead and do that off camera. I don't know that you want to watch me do this. And then at the same time, once I get all that wrapped up, I'll likely go ahead and finish welding out some of this. I do have to flip this over in order to weld. Well, I guess I could probably tack that coupler pocket from the back. Let me do that real quick. I don't want any welds on the inside of the coupler pocket, so kind of want to get this here. All right, now at least I know that's not moving. That looks really good. All right, happy with that so far. Very happy. All right, so for me to finish welding out the pilot, I need to switch over to the MiG 285 because it has 035 wire in it. I will do that again also off camera. And then when I get this all welded out, including the coupler pockets on both ends, in order to finish this out, I need to flip this over. But I need to flip it over because there's some stuff on the front. There's a couple of pieces here that get welded to the front of the top of the coupler pocket. I need to fit those and then decide if I'm going to weld out the outside. I think if I weld out the outside, I want to use a finer wire, or I might TIG weld it just so that weld seam is pretty small. I think TIG welding is probably my best option if I want this to go away and not be too prominent on the front of the locomotive. All right, I'm going to get the steps welded in and fitted on this side of the pilot. For the rear of the locomotive, I'll move up to the front and I'll bring you back when I'm ready to probably flip this thing over. So it's going to be a little while where I can finish welding this stuff out. So I got some of the finished welding done around the pilot, but while I got this thing upside down, I want to go ahead and get these front trim pieces tacked into place as well. There's this front piece here, and then there's these smaller side pieces. I'll get these tacked in, put a little weld in the back of it, and then I need to still switch over to the 035 wire to finish welding the pilot to the floor sheet. I don't really need to do this. It's going to get cleaned up again anyway, but figure while I'm here, might as well take the time to do it. All right, I'll go ahead and get this side here cleaned up and do the same thing to the other end. Well, I think that's going to have to do it for this episode. I've made quite a bit of progress. You know, these welds aren't the greatest. They're not the worst either. Sometimes getting into a comfortable position in order to get a good weld, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but I did my best for what it was at the moment. So I feel like I have most of this completely welded where it needs to be. I am going to go over it again and look at everything just to make sure I'm satisfied with how the structural integrity of this pilot's going to be. It feels really strong. I don't think I missed anything. Now, I didn't get to the 035 wire to weld the pilot to the floor sheet. I still need to do that. And the only reason why I'm not doing that in this episode is because I am just about out of welding gas. And I'm afraid that if I keep going a little bit longer, I'm going to run out of gas mid-weld. I also need to get some more argon for TIG welding, because once I flip this thing over, there are some welds on the front of it and on the pilot that I want to complete, but I want to do that with TIG welding. It's a little bit more controlled. It's a little more time consuming, but it doesn't splatter like MIG welding does, and I can take my time. MIG welding is a nice, easy welding process, and really anybody can learn how to MIG weld. And if you've ever thought about learning how to MIG weld, I say just go for it. You can get a nice, inexpensive welder from somebody like Prime Weld and get started. So there's a couple of different things I need to do besides welding up the pilot to the floor sheet, and that's to deal with the fuel tank. The structure of the fuel tank is comprised of a few different components, and three of them are these ribs that go on the end. And then there's this centerpiece here that, as the name would imply, goes in the middle. Now, these center ribs are a little bit off. probably my welding a little mispositioned here, so I'm going to have to do some work on the slots in order to get these to fit. But the other reason why I need to do some additional work on this is what I'm going to use this fuel tank for. Now, JT Engineering, his design, one of his options is to put 3 speakers in the base of it for a sound card. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use something a little bit different. Although the engine noises and all that stuff I think are interesting, I have yet to find one that at this scale really sounds appropriate. They sound like a louder version of an HO scale train, and it just sounds muffled, not a whole lot of dynamic range. So there's 2 things that I want to put inside the fuel tank, and I need to make sure that they're going to fit. One of those things that's going to go in here is a 6-inch bell. Now, this is a standard trolley bell that you would find in alarm systems or trolley cars or whatever. I'm going to drive that with a circuit that will ring it twice every second, which is the cadence that you would see on a diesel locomotive. It's going to be louder than anything that would be in a speaker, but I think it will obviously be more natural, and I think I'm going to like that a lot better. The other thing that needs to fit in here is this. This is the horn I think I'm going to use. Now, it will fit if I could kind of finagle it in here, but realistically it won't fit as it is. What I'm likely going to have to do is modify this bracket and cut this in half, and then figure out different ways to mount the horns inside the tank. And of course that is likely going to necessitate modifying this center support because I won't be able to get the horns through the small opening that's in the top down inside of here to mount them. I want to be able to access these if I ever need to repair them or replace them. Of course, part of the object here is to get them so there's some volume here. Now, the sound's going to come out the bottom, which means it won't be as loud as they are natively, and they are pretty loud. But I have to find a spot for this and the little mini air compressor that comes with it. And I'm pretty sure I can find a way to get that to fit in here as well. But it does mean that I don't think that I'm going to be able to use this rib, this center rib, as it's made. I might end up just modifying this rib and just cutting out a large portion of the sides. That may also mean I'm going to need to build up this edge with something, maybe wrap another piece of steel around it and give it some thickness. I don't know yet. I could go ahead and have another one of these cut, use this one in this. I don't know. Again, I don't know exactly how I'm going to make this fit. So I have to figure that out before I weld in this at least this center brace. And I might need to manufacture some kind of a bracket to hold these horns in place. Yeah, this is ridiculous, but I like it, and I think it'll be fun. And maybe it might piss off a couple people. Who knows? Because many of the comments you all have left on the other videos of this build series, I'm going to continue to keep this over here on the YouTubes. So I really appreciate your feedback on that. Make sure you're liking and subscribing and commenting on the videos. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you don't like. So far, I really enjoyed this build. I'm really looking forward to maybe being able to test this out on the railroad this year before it gets too cold in the fall. I still have some stuff to figure out, but I should be able to mount the trucks and get the battery and dummy up some electronics to get this thing down the railroad just to see how it tracks on the rails. I won't hook anything up to it, I don't think. Maybe I will. We'll see how that goes. I'll be sure to throw up a snippet of that on the channel if I ever do get to that point where I get it out on the railroad this year. But we'll see if I'm going to be able to make that happen or not. Well, that's going to be it for this one. I really appreciate you watching. If you'd like to support the channel in other ways, you can do that through PayPal or Patreon, or there's some other things in there too. Well, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.